care for these gardens." Manuel gave a slight nod and walked away, his mind swirling with memories of Lucia and the inexplicable resemblance of Luna to her. He needed answers, but before we dive into the story, drop a comment below about where you're watching from. Enjoy the journey, everyone. He knew the moment wasn't right for more questions. Meanwhile, Luna returned to her work, still unaware of the profound impact her presence had on the reclusive owner of the mansion. The following days were marked by contemplative silence. Manuel, always reserved, became even more introspective. Luna, for her part, continued to work with dedication, unaware of the complex emotions she had stirred in Manuel. The garden flourished, but something else was beginning to germinate in the silent corners of the grand mansion. Another day dawned at Manuel Rodriguez's mansion, and the garden was more beautiful than ever under Luna's diligent care. The flowers bloomed in a spectacular array of colors and fragrances, filling the air with a sense of renewal and beauty. However, Manuel could not shake Luna's image from his mind. The disturbing resemblance to Lucia, his deceased girlfriend, kept him restless. He decided he needed to speak with Luna again, not just to congratulate her on the excellent work, but also to try to understand the strange feeling that plagued him. While Luna worked in a flower bed near the grand fountain in the garden, Manuel approached her. His steps were determined, but his heart was heavy with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. "Luna," he called out. She turned quickly, surprised by Manuel's sudden presence. "Your work here has been nothing short of extraordinary. The garden has never looked so beautiful." "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez," Luna replied with a shy smile. "It's a pleasure to care for this place." Manuel paused, his gaze fixed on Luna's face. Then he noticed the moon-shaped necklace delicately hanging around her neck. The shock was instantaneous. His eyes widened, and he felt the ground sway beneath his feet. "That necklace," Manuel murmured, stepping back. The sight of the small amulet brought a flood of memories. It was the same necklace he had given to Lucia on her birthday many years ago. Luna, noticing the sudden change in Manuel's expression, became alarmed. "Mr. Rodriguez, are you all right?" she asked, concerned. Manuel tried to compose himself, but the intensity of his emotions left him disoriented. You remind me of someone," he said, his voice trembling. "Someone I knew a long time ago. And that necklace, it's identical to one I've seen before." Luna was confused and frightened. I don't know what to say, sir. This necklace was a gift from my mother." Manuel felt a wave of confusion and emotion wash over him. "Luna, I need to talk to you in private," he said, trying to remain calm. "Please come with me." Still apprehensive, Luna nodded. Manuel led her inside the mansion, through the elegant and silent corridors, to his office. He closed the door behind him, creating an environment of privacy and introspection. "Please have a seat," Manuel said, indicating a chair facing his desk. Luna obeyed, sitting nervously. Manuel took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say could change everything. Luna's resilience was undeniable. Despite the hardships she faced, her unwavering spirit and the need to provide for her family pushed her to keep striving, honing her skills with every passing day. One morning, while carefully trimming a bed of roses, she heard footsteps approaching. Looking up, she saw Dona Clara, an older woman from the town, holding a small envelope. "Luna dear," Dona Clara said with a warm yet excited smile, handing over the envelope. "This is a special invitation. Mr. Manuel Rodriguez, the owner of that grand mansion on the hill, has heard about your work. He wants you to take care of his gardens. They say the pay is generous." Luna's heart pounded in her chest. Manuel Rodriguez. She had heard of him, a man known not only for his immense wealth, but also for his reserved and enigmatic nature. This could be the opportunity she had been waiting for, a chance to finally secure her grandfather's health and well-being. Taking a deep breath, she accepted the invitation with gratitude and determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready. Luna arrived at the grand mansion with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The wrought iron gates creaked open, revealing a long driveway lined with towering, ancient trees that cast shifting shadows on the cobbled path. The mansion itself loomed ahead, an architectural masterpiece with gray stone walls, arched windows draped in heavy velvet curtains, and an air of quiet mystery. A uniformed staff member greeted her and led her inside. The grandeur of the mansion was overwhelming, so different from the modest gardens she had tended before. She was soon introduced to Marta, the housekeeper, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Welcome, Luna," Marta said with a curt nod. "You start tomorrow. Today, I'll show you the gardens and introduce you to the staff." As they walked through the sprawling estate, Luna couldn't help but admire the beauty hidden beneath years of neglect. The once magnificent gardens had become overgrown and untamed, but with the right care, she could bring them back to life. Along the way, she met Charles, the head gardener, a robust man with graying hair and hands calloused from years of hard work. He eyed her with curiosity before offering a gruff but approving nod. "So, you're the new helper," he said, arms crossed. "Good. We need all the hands we can get to restore this place." Luna smiled. "I'm ready to work." As they continued their walk, hushed conversations filled the air. The staff spoke in whispers about the elusive owner of the mansion. "He's an enigma," Charles muttered, his voice low. "Works hard, speaks little, never married, no children. They say he's never loved anyone, at least not since a tragedy in his youth." Marta, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Despite his fortune, he's a lonely man. He prefers books and business over company. The mansion is always filled with important guests, but he rarely shows his face." Another staff member, Diego, who managed the house's maintenance, leaned in and added in a conspiratorial whisper, "Some say he carries a great sadness, something from his past that he's never been able to forget." Luna listened intently, curiosity sparking within her. Who was this man really? And what secrets did this mansion hold? As the sun set behind the towering mansion, Luna stood in the heart of the overgrown garden, her fingers grazing the petals of a wilted rose. She had come here for work, but something told her that she was about to become part of a much bigger story. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Luna was exhausted but exhilarated. The potential of these gardens was endless, and she was determined to bring them back to life. Her first day at Rodriguez Estate began before dawn. As the first light broke over the hills, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Day by day, the gardens transformed under her care. Vibrant blooms replaced wilted flowers. The air smelled fresher, and the once wild hedges were sculpted into elegant shapes. Even the mansion's staff took notice. "You have a rare gift, Luna," Charles admitted one day, surveying a newly revived bed of lilies. "I've never seen anyone work magic with plants the way you do." Even Marta, ever serious, softened as she gazed out the window. "The gardens are magnificent," she murmured. "Mr. Rodriguez will be very pleased." Despite his reclusive nature, Manuel noticed the change. One afternoon, after returning from a business trip, he stepped outside for a walk. The moment his polished shoes crunched against the gravel, a strange feeling washed over him. The air smelled different. The once dying roses now stood tall. The trees whispered with the wind, their leaves rustling like laughter. A flicker of nostalgia hit him, memories of a past he had tried to bury. A time when gardens meant something. A time when he wasn't alone. Determined to thank the new gardener, he searched for her. He found her by the stone fountain, tending to a bed of violets. Her back was turned, her hands moving with practiced grace. Manuel stepped forward, his footsteps almost silent. "You're Luna, right?" She turned, startled, and wiped her dirt-covered hands on her apron. "Yes, sir. Is there something I can help you with?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes held a trace of nervousness. Manuel's breath caught. For a moment, the world tilted. Lucia. His heart clenched as a ghost from his past stared back at him. The hair, the deep, expressive eyes, the hesitant yet familiar smile. Everything about her was hauntingly similar to Lucia, the woman he had once loved and lost. Luna shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "Sir." Manuel swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "Sorry, He hesitated, his voice quieter now. "You remind me of someone I once knew." Luna blinked, caught off guard. "I hope "They're good memories," she said gently, sensing the sadness in his eyes. For a long moment, Manuel said nothing. Then his voice softened. "Your work here is admirable, Luna. The gardens have never looked this beautiful." A slow smile spread across Luna's lips. "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. It's an honor to be here." But as she watched him walk away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this job had just become more than she had expected. There was something buried in Manuel Rodriguez's past, and somehow she had just become a part of it. Care for these gardens. Manuel gave a slight nod and walked away, his mind swirling with memories of Lucia and the inexplicable resemblance of Luna to her. He needed answers, but knew the moment wasn't right for more questions. Meanwhile, Luna returned to her work, still unaware of the profound impact her presence had on the reclusive owner of the mansion. The following days were marked by contemplative silence. Manuel, always reserved, became even more introspective. Luna, for her part, continued to work with dedication, unaware of the complex emotions she had stirred in Manuel. The garden flourished, but something else was beginning to germinate in the silent corners of the grand mansion. Another day dawned at Manuel Rodriguez's mansion, and the garden was more beautiful than ever under Luna's diligent care. The flowers bloomed in a spectacular array of colors and fragrances, filling the air with a sense of renewal and beauty. However, Manuel could not shake Luna's image from his mind. The disturbing resemblance to Lucia, his deceased girlfriend, kept him restless. He decided he needed to speak with Luna again, not just to congratulate her on the excellent work, but also to try to understand the strange feeling that plagued him. While Luna worked in a flower bed near the grand fountain in the garden, Manuel approached her. His steps were determined, but his heart was heavy with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. "Luna," he called out. She turned quickly, surprised by Manuel's sudden presence. "Your work here has been nothing short of extraordinary. The garden has never looked so beautiful." "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez," Luna replied with a shy smile. "It's a pleasure to care for this place." Manuel paused, his gaze fixed on Luna's face. Then he noticed the moon-shaped necklace delicately hanging around her neck. The shock was instantaneous. His eyes widened, and he felt the ground sway beneath his feet. "That necklace," Manuel murmured, stepping back. The sight of the small amulet brought a flood of memories. It was the same necklace he had given to Lucia on her birthday many years ago. Luna, noticing the sudden change in Manuel's expression, became alarmed. "Mr. Rodriguez, are you all right?" she asked, concerned. Manuel tried to compose himself, but the intensity of his emotions left him disoriented. You remind me of someone," he said, his voice trembling. "Someone I knew a long time ago. And that necklace, it's identical to one I've seen before." Luna was confused and frightened. I don't know what to say, sir. This necklace was a gift from my mother." Manuel felt a wave of confusion and emotion wash over him. "Luna, I need to talk to you in private," he said, trying to remain calm. "Please come with me." Still apprehensive, Luna nodded. Manuel led her inside the mansion, through the elegant and silent corridors, to his office. He closed the door behind him, creating an environment of privacy and introspection. "Please have a seat," Manuel said, indicating a chair facing his desk. Luna obeyed, sitting nervously. Manuel took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say could change everything. Luna felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement as she stood amidst the sprawling gardens of the grand mansion. The scent of freshly turned earth clung to her hands, and despite the ache in her muscles, a sense of purpose filled her heart. These gardens, once neglected, had the potential to bloom with vibrant life again. But it wasn't just the garden that intrigued her. It was the mysterious owner of the mansion, Manuel Rodriguez. The whispers among the staff painted him as a reclusive, enigmatic figure. Some said he carried an unbearable sorrow, a tragedy that left him locked away in his world of wealth and solitude. Her first few days passed in quiet dedication. Each sunrise found her tending to the plants with unwavering focus, and with each passing day, the garden transformed. Flowers stretched toward the sky in bursts of color, hedges sculpted into elegant shapes, and the once dull landscape shimmered with new life. One afternoon, as she trimmed a bed of lilies near the grandstone fountain, she sensed a presence behind her. Straightening up, she turned to find a tall man watching her intently. His piercing gaze held a mix of curiosity and something else, something deeper. "You must be Luna," he said, his voice deep and measured. She nodded, hastily wiping the dirt from her hands onto her apron. "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" Manuel studied her for a moment longer, his expression unreadable. "Your work is remarkable," he finally said. "The gardens haven't looked this alive in years." A shy smile tugged at Luna's lips. "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I just—" Her words faltered as she noticed his gaze lower to the delicate moon-shaped pendant resting against her collarbone. A sharp intake of breath. His entire demeanor shifted. The color drained from his face as he took a step back, as if struck by an invisible force. "That necklace," his voice was barely above a whisper, yet thick with emotion. "Where did you get that?" Luna instinctively reached for the pendant, her fingers brushing over its smooth surface. "It was a gift," she said hesitantly. "From my mother." Manuel's world tilted on its axis. The necklace, the same intricate moon design, the same delicate engravings, was identical to the one he had given to Lucia. Memories, long buried, crashed into him like a tidal wave. He could almost hear Lucia's laughter, feel the warmth of her embrace. "I need to talk to you," he said abruptly, his voice unsteady. Inside, now, Luna's heart pounded in her chest. There was something in his eyes, something intense, almost desperate, hesitant, but intrigued. She nodded and followed him inside the mansion. The corridors were eerily silent, lined with elegant chandeliers and walls adorned with paintings that seemed to watch her every step. Manuel led her into his office, a room filled with heavy bookshelves and the scent of aged leather. He gestured for her to sit. Luna obeyed, her hands gripping the arms of the chair as an uneasy silence stretched between them. Manuel remained standing, pacing slightly, running a hand through his hair before exhaling sharply. "Luna, the story I'm about to tell you is painful, but I need you to listen." Luna swallowed hard, nodding. "I'm listening." Manuel sat down across from her, his gaze distant as he drifted into the past. "Many years ago, I loved a woman named Lucia," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "She was the light of my life, my only happiness. We met when I was 25. I worked in a small restaurant, barely making ends meet, and she was everything I ever wanted. Kind, beautiful, full of life." Luna felt her pulse quicken, an inexplicable tension tightening around her chest. "She had this way of making the ordinary feel magical," Manuel continued, a sad smile ghosting across his lips. "On her 24th birthday, I gave her something special, a moon-shaped necklace. I told her that she lit up my world like the moon in the dark sky." Luna's breath hitched. Her fingers trembled against the pendant. The very words he spoke, she had heard them before. From her mother. Manuel's face darkened as he reached the part of the story that still haunted him. A few weeks later, she left to visit her family in the countryside. I didn't want her to go. I had a terrible feeling, but I let her, and she never came back. Luna's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what was coming. They told me she drowned. His voice cracked. That she was gone. Just like that. One moment, she was my world, and the next, she was ripped away from me. Tears welled in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. I never found peace after that. I buried myself in work, built this empire, but none of it mattered. Nothing filled the void she left. Silence settled between them like a heavy fog. Luna could barely breathe. Finally, she whispered, "Mr. Rodriguez, what if Lucia didn't drown?" Manuel's head snapped up. "What?" Luna swallowed hard, every piece of the puzzle falling into place. "My mother, her name was Lucia." Manuel's world shattered in an instant. He could barely hear his own breath, his pulse roaring in his ears. His gaze locked onto hers, his hands trembling as he stared at the necklace once more. "Luna!" His voice was hoarse, barely audible. "Are you saying?" A tear slipped down Luna's cheek as she nodded. "I think I'm your daughter." The room spun. The past and present collided in a swirl of emotions too overwhelming to contain. And for the first time in decades, Manuel Rodriguez felt something he never thought he would feel again: hope. Luna felt a strange mix of exhaustion and excitement as she stepped into the grand gardens of the Rodriguez estate. The sprawling land, though slightly neglected, held an undeniable beauty, a beauty she was determined to restore. But it wasn't just the challenge of revival that intrigued her. It was the whispers about the reclusive owner, Manuel Rodriguez, a man cloaked in mystery, that stirred an unexplainable curiosity within her. She arrived at dawn, the first rays of sunlight painting the sky in soft gold. The scent of damp earth filled the air as she ran her fingers over the leaves and branches, already envisioning their transformation. With practiced movements, she set to work, her hands weaving magic through the soil. Day by day, the gardens flourished under her care. Flowers bloomed in vibrant hues, vines were tamed, and neglected shrubs were shaped into elegant forms. The estate staff took notice. "You have a gift, Luna," said Charles, the head gardener, as he admired a row of freshly revived roses. "I've worked here for years, but I've never seen someone bring a garden back to life the way you have." Even Marta, the stern housekeeper, whose face rarely betrayed emotion, seemed impressed. "Mr. Rodriguez will be pleased," she remarked, almost smiling. Manuel Rodriguez, a man of few words and fewer appearances, had barely acknowledged the transformation happening right outside his mansion. But one evening, as he returned from a business trip, something compelled him to take a walk through his gardens. The gravel crunched softly beneath his polished shoes as he observed the changes. The flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze, their fragrance wrapping around him in a nostalgic embrace. A memory stirred, a long-buried fragment of laughter, of soft whispers beneath moonlit skies. He clenched his fists. That was the past. But something about the gardens felt familiar. Determined to meet the gardener responsible for this revival, Manuel sought her out. He found Luna kneeling near the fountain, carefully tending to a bed of lilies. The setting sun cast a golden glow on her skin, and as she looked up at him, his breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded. The resemblance was uncanny. For a moment, the world around him ceased to exist. Her hair, her eyes, even the way her lips curled slightly when she was deep in thought. It was all too familiar. It was like staring into the past, into the face of Lucia, the only woman he had ever loved. "You're Luna, right?" His deep voice, usually steady and controlled, wavered slightly. Luna stood, wiping the dirt from her hands onto her apron. "Yes, sir. Is there something I can help you with?" Manuel's gaze remained locked onto her, his mind racing, memories colliding with reality. And then his eyes fell on the delicate silver chain around her neck. His stomach dropped. The moon-shaped pendant gleamed softly against her skin. His blood ran cold. The very same necklace he had given Lucia on her birthday, years ago. A surge of emotions, confusion, disbelief, and an unexplainable hope gripped him. "That necklace," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get it?" Luna instinctively touched the pendant. "My mother gave it to me," she said cautiously. "She told me it was special, a gift from someone she once loved." Manuel staggered back. His pulse roared in his ears. Lucia. Could it be? A whirlwind of emotions threatened to consume him, but he steadied himself. "Luna, what is your mother's name?" Luna hesitated, sensing something deep and painful in his question. "Lucia," she finally answered. "Lucia Martinez." Manuel's world tilted. The name, the necklace, the resemblance. It was too much to be mere coincidence. Luna watched as something unreadable flickered across his face. "Mr. Rodriguez, are you all right?" He took a deep breath, struggling to find words. "Luna, I need to speak with you in private." She hesitated, glancing around. The air felt charged, heavy with something unknown. But she nodded. "All right." He led her through the grand halls of the mansion, his mind racing. Memories crashed into him with every step. The past he had buried, the love he had lost, was it all a lie? In his office, Manuel shut the door behind him. The room was dimly lit, lined with towering bookshelves, and the air smelled of aged paper and polished wood. "Please sit," he said, his voice strained. Luna sat, her fingers instinctively gripping the pendant, as though it held the answers she desperately needed. Manuel remained standing, taking a deep breath before speaking. "What I'm about to tell you is something I have never spoken of," he began. "Years ago, I met a woman named Lucia. She was the love of my life." Luna's eyes widened. "We worked together in a small restaurant in the city," he continued, his gaze distant, lost in the past. "She was full of life, always dreaming, always laughing. We fell in love. It was the kind of love people write stories about." Luna's heart pounded. The puzzle pieces were beginning to fit together in terrifying ways. "I gave her that necklace on her birthday," Manuel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I told her she was my moon, lighting up my darkest nights." He swallowed hard. "But then she left." Luna frowned. "Left?" Manuel nodded. "She went back home for a short visit and never returned." His voice grew hoarse. "Her family told me she had drowned in a creek. I was devastated. It broke me." Luna gasped. "But she didn't drown." His eyes snapped to hers, raw and searching. "What?" "My mother is alive," Luna whispered. "She lives in the countryside, taking care of my grandfather." Silence stretched between them, thick with disbelief. Manuel's hands trembled. "Are you telling me that Lucia is alive?" Luna nodded, her own voice shaking. "Yes. And if she's the Lucia you loved then, Mr. Rodriguez," she hesitated, her heart hammering, "you might be my father." Manuel's breath caught in his throat. He felt as though the ground beneath him had vanished. Luna, his gardener, the woman who had unknowingly rekindled a long-dead part of his soul, could be his daughter. The truth, buried for decades, was finally clawing its way to the surface. And nothing would ever be the same again. The night was restless for both Manuel and Luna. Each lay in their rooms, their minds flooded with questions that had no immediate answers. Could Lucia truly be alive? If so, why had she never returned to him? Manuel's heart pounded with unease as the past collided with his present. Meanwhile, Luna, clutching the moon-shaped necklace, felt as if she had stepped into a mystery far beyond her understanding. As dawn broke, golden rays spilled over the grand mansion. The anticipation was almost suffocating. Today, they would embark on a journey that could change everything. Manuel and Luna set out in his sleek, black car, the engine humming as they left the city behind. Towering skyscrapers gradually gave way to sprawling fields and rolling green hills. Luna stared out the window, nostalgia settling over her like a warm embrace. "I always loved the countryside," she murmured, breaking the silence. "My mother taught me how to care for plants when I was little. We'd spend hours tending to our small garden. She used to say that plants whisper their needs to those who truly listen." Manuel glanced at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "She sounds like a wonderful woman." Luna nodded, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. "She is, but there were always things she never talked about. She avoided certain memories, and now I wonder if it was because of you." Manuel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The thought of Lucia, her love, her laughter, and then her sudden disappearance made his stomach knot. Had she really chosen to stay away all these years? The journey stretched on, the weight of unspoken thoughts thickening the air between them. Hours passed, the cityscape long behind them, until they arrived at a quiet countryside town nestled between the hills. The streets were lined with small, quaint houses, their wooden porches adorned with potted flowers. It was a stark contrast to the urban world Manuel was accustomed to, yet something about it felt eerily familiar. Luna directed him through the winding roads until they reached her family's farm. The sight was breathtaking, endless green fields, fruit-laden trees swaying in the breeze, and a humble wooden house standing proudly in the middle of it all. A large garden, meticulously maintained, stretched beside the house, bursting with colors and life. Manuel turned off the engine and exhaled slowly. "This is it." Luna hesitated before stepping out. "Welcome to my home, Manuel. Let's find out the truth together." As they approached the house, Luna's heart pounded. She reached for the door, but before she could knock, it creaked open. An older woman stood before them, her eyes widening as they locked onto Manuel. Time seemed to freeze. Manuel's breath caught in his throat. He knew those eyes. Lucia. His voice barely rose above a whisper. The woman, Luna's mother, staggered back, clutching her chest as if she had seen a ghost. Manuel, it can't be. Luna looked between them, her hands trembling. Mom, what's going on? Silence stretched unbearably before Lucia finally spoke, her voice quivering. I never thought I would see you again. Manuel stepped forward, desperate for answers. Lucia, why? Why did you disappear? Why did you let me believe you were dead? Tears welled in Lucia's eyes. Because I had no choice, because I had to protect you. A heavy silence followed her words, the weight of hidden truths pressing down on all three of them. The answers they had come for were within reach, but the secrets yet to be unveiled could change everything. The past had finally caught up with them, and there was no turning back now. The sun hung low in the sky as Manuel and Luna stood before the wooden farmhouse, the weight of their journey pressing on them. The crisp countryside air carried a sense of both nostalgia and anticipation. Luna inhaled deeply, steadying herself before calling out, Mother! The door creaked open, revealing a woman whose presence seemed frozen in time. Lucia. Her face, though touched by the years, still bore the warmth Manuel remembered. But her eyes, those same eyes that once held the fire of youth, widened in shock as she locked gazes with him. Lucia. Manuel's voice wavered, thick with disbelief and emotion. Is it really you? Lucia's breath hitched. She brought a trembling hand to her mouth, fighting back tears. Manuel, she whispered. I can't believe it. Luna stood between them, heart pounding as she witnessed a past she never knew unfold before her eyes. Her mother had told her so little about her father, and now, here he was, standing in front of them, demanding answers. Manuel took a cautious step forward. You're alive all this time. Why, Lucia? Why didn't you come back? Why did you let me believe you were dead? His voice cracked, years of pain surfacing in his words. Before Lucia could respond, an elderly man stepped into the doorway, leaning heavily on a cane. Carlos, Lucia's father. His expression shifted from confusion to shock, then something deeper, guilt. Lucia, who is this man? Carlos asked, though the tremor in his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Lucia hesitated before speaking, her voice laced with sorrow. Father, this is Manuel, the man I loved. And Luna, she is our daughter. Carlos paled, gripping the door frame for support. Oh, dear God, what have we done? Manuel's eyes darkened. You knew, he said, his voice a low growl. You knew all this time, and let me believe she was gone. Why? Carlos exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging. Manuel, listen to me. Let me explain. I did what I thought was best. When Lucia came home for the holidays, she was pregnant. She was terrified, unsure of how you'd react, uncertain of the future. I thought I was protecting her, protecting the baby. Lucia shook her head, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. I wanted to come back, Manuel, but my father convinced me to stay. He said it would be safer for me, for our child. He told me you wouldn't understand, that it would be too much for you. Manuel's fists clenched at his sides. So you made the decision for me? You let me grieve for you. You let me believe I had lost everything? That was cruel, Lucia. Inhuman. His voice rose, raw with emotion. Do you have any idea how much I suffered? How many nights have I spent crying for you? Carlos stepped forward, his frail hands raised in supplication. I know, Manuel. I know it was wrong. And I asked, no, I begged, for your forgiveness. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that I only caused more pain. Luna, who had stood silent until now, finally found her voice. Why didn't you tell me the truth, Mother? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you let me grow up believing my father didn't exist? Lucia reached for her daughter's hands, her touch pleading. I was scared, Luna. When you were born, I thought the only way to protect you was to keep the past buried. And as the years went by, it became harder and harder to tell you. I didn't know how to explain everything. Manuel ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. The emotions threatened to consume him, but he fought for control. We need time to process this. But one thing is certain. He turned to Luna, his gaze softening. I want to know my daughter. I want to make up for the years we lost. Luna's throat tightened, emotions crashing over her like a tidal wave. She looked at her mother, then at Manuel, then back again. The pieces of her life were finally falling into place, painful, raw, but real. Lucia wiped her eyes, nodding. I understand. It's time for the truth to come out. No more secrets. The air around them felt heavy, yet charged with a newfound hope. It was the beginning of something uncertain, but for the first time in years, Manuel felt like he wasn't alone in the darkness anymore. Lucia nodded, still crying. Of course, Manuel. We owe you the truth. We owe it to Luna. The air inside the small living room felt thick, charged with emotions too heavy to bear. The walls, adorned with faded family photographs, seemed to whisper secrets of a past buried under years of silence. Manuel clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spent years mourning Lucia, living with a grief that was never meant to exist. And now she was here, alive, breathing. A woman he had once loved beyond measure. Carlos, his face worn with guilt, took a deep breath. His voice trembled but remained firm. Manuel, there is so much you need to know. Manuel's jaw tightened. Then start talking. Why did you let me believe Lucia was dead? His voice was raw, edged with betrayal. Carlos lowered his gaze, his hands gripping the armrest of his chair. Lucia came home during the holidays, but she didn't return alone. She was pregnant. We were already facing hardships. Her mother was gravely ill, and the thought of her leaving again while carrying a child, I couldn't allow it. We needed her here. Manuel inhaled sharply. You couldn't allow it? You decided for her? For me? Lucia, sitting beside Luna, squeezed her daughter's hand, her shoulders trembling with sobs. Manuel, I was terrified. I was only 24. I didn't know how you would react. My father convinced me that staying here was best, for me and for the baby. And when my mother passed, I was too broken to think about anything else. Manuel's voice was laced with pain. So instead of telling me, you let me grieve you? You let me live in agony, believing you were gone. Lucia nodded, her face pale. I thought I was doing what was best, but I see now I was wrong. Manuel took a step back, running a hand over his face. Years. He had spent years drowning in sorrow for a woman who had been alive this whole time, and their child, their daughter, had grown up without him. Luna, who had been silent, finally spoke. Mr. Rodriguez. She hesitated, her voice shaking. Manuel, I grew up without knowing who my father was. My mother told me stories, beautiful ones, but she never said your name. I never imagined. Manuel turned to Luna, his heart breaking. He took a shaky breath and whispered, Luna, you are my daughter. I lost everything, all these years, because of a lie, because of fear. I don't even know how to process this. Tears streamed down Luna's face. I lost a lot too, but now we have a chance to make up for it. We have a chance to be a family. Lucia squeezed Luna's hand, her gaze locked onto Manuel. Please, Manuel, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I beg for it. I thought I was protecting us, but I was only running away. Manuel swallowed hard. I don't know if I can forgive Lucia. Not yet, but I do know that I want to be in Luna's life. I won't let the past steal another day from me. Carlos, his body weighed down by years of regret, placed a trembling hand on Manuel's shoulder. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness either. I only hope that one day you can find it in your heart to move forward. Manuel inhaled deeply, the pain still raw, but the longing for something more, something real, began to take root in his heart. Forgiveness isn't easy, Carlos, but I want to try. Silence settled over the room, but it was no longer the silence of secrets and regrets. It was the silence of a new beginning, a fragile hope that, perhaps, the past could finally be rewritten. The weight of the truth had finally been revealed, shattering years of secrets and separation. Manuel, Lucia, and Luna stood on the precipice of a new beginning, though the wounds of the past still throbbed beneath the surface. The answers they had long sought had brought pain, but also the fragile promise of healing and renewal. As the afternoon melted into evening, the small family property basked in a contemplative silence. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues over the vast fields and trees, painting an atmosphere of serenity. Yet, beneath this peaceful exterior, emotions churned like an unsettled storm. Carlos, noticing the exhaustion etched on their faces, cleared his throat and spoke softly. "Manuel, please stay with us tonight. We all need time to process everything and talk more tomorrow." Manuel hesitated for a moment, but the unspoken need for closure tugged at him. "Thank you, Carlos. I think a night of rest will do us all some good." Lucia busied herself preparing a simple yet cozy room for Manuel, while Luna helped set the table for a modest dinner. The meal passed mostly in silence, each person lost in their thoughts, digesting the revelations of the day. Later that night, Manuel lay on the small bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of emotions pressing down on him. Memories of Lucia, the woman he had once loved so deeply, collided with the betrayal that had kept them apart. And then there was Luna, the daughter he never had the chance to hold, to raise, to guide. The pain of lost years gnawed at him, but beneath it, a quiet sense of gratitude grew. He finally knew the truth. His thoughts shifted to Carlos, the man who had orchestrated the deception. Despite everything, Manuel couldn't ignore the frailty in his features, the weight of guilt evident in his eyes. He was ill, perhaps severely so, and living in the countryside, far from proper medical care, would only make things worse. "I can't be as cruel as they were to me," Manuel murmured to himself, his fingers clenching the blanket. "They made mistakes, but they did what they thought was right at the time. I have to be better. I have to offer them a chance, not just at redemption, but at a better future." With that resolution, sleep finally claimed him, offering a fleeting respite from the turmoil. The next morning, the house stirred early, wrapped in an air of quiet anticipation. The smell of fresh bread and brewed coffee wafted through the air as Lucia prepared a simple yet comforting breakfast. Manuel sat at the table, his mind made up. After breakfast, he called Lucia, Luna, and Carlos into the living room. His tone was firm yet filled with a quiet sincerity. "I've thought a lot about everything, and I've made a decision. I know we have years of pain to overcome, but I want to start by offering you all a new opportunity." Lucia's breath caught in her throat as she exchanged a wary glance with her father. "Manuel, what do you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "I want all of you to come live with me at the mansion." A stunned silence filled the room. Luna's eyes widened, while Carlos looked as if he hadn't heard correctly. Lucia pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "Manuel, that's incredibly generous, but we don't want to be a burden to you." "You won't be a burden," Manuel assured her. "Carlos, your health is deteriorating. In the city, you'll have access to the best medical care. Lucia, Luna, you'll both have a stable and secure home. More than anything, we'll have the chance to be a family, to rebuild what was lost." Carlos swallowed hard, emotion choking his voice. "Manuel, I made so many mistakes. I don't deserve this chance, but if you're willing to offer it, I accept it with gratitude." Luna, eyes brimming with tears, smiled. "Thank you, Manuel. This is our chance, a chance to be whole again." Lucia, wiping away her tears, took Manuel's hands in hers. "I never thought I'd get this chance to make things right. Thank you, Manuel, for your forgiveness, for your kindness." A tentative warmth spread between them, a bridge forming over the deep chasm of the past. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, the pain couldn't be erased overnight, but step by step, they would heal. For the first time in years, hope flickered in their hearts, like the first rays of dawn breaking through the darkness. The heavy weight of unspoken words filled the air as Manuel, Lucia, Luna, and Carlos sat in the grand living room of Manuel's mansion. The room, adorned with towering bookshelves and warm golden light, stood in stark contrast to the humble countryside home they had left behind. But despite the grandeur, an undeniable tension loomed over them, a tension thick with years of lost time, deception, and regret. Carlos, his frail hands trembling slightly, looked at Manuel. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "After everything I did, after keeping you from your own daughter for so many years." "Nothing will change the past," Manuel interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "But we can decide what happens from here. That's why I brought you all here. We need a new beginning." Lucia sat beside her father, her fingers intertwined in her lap, her face a mixture of gratitude and shame. "Manuel, I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I thought I was protecting everyone, Luna, you my father. But I see now that fear made me a coward." Luna, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "What's done is done, but I don't want to waste any more time. I grew up without a father because of choices I didn't make. I want to know you, Manuel. I want to understand what kind of man you are." Manuel smiled softly, his heart swelling at his daughter's strength. "Then let's start now." The transition into their new life was swift, but not without its challenges. Lucia, unused to luxury, found it difficult to accept Manuel's generosity. She had spent years living modestly, sacrificing for her daughter and her aging father. Now, in a house with chandeliers, marble floors, and a staff ready to attend to their every need, she felt out of place. One evening, as she stood in the vast kitchen, she turned to Manuel. "I appreciate everything you're doing, but I don't want to just exist here. I need to contribute, to feel like I belong." Manuel nodded, understanding. "Then help me build something," he said. "Help me turn this place into more than just a mansion. Let's make it a home." For Carlos, the change was overwhelming. Used to the quiet solitude of the countryside, he struggled to adjust. His illness left him weak, but Manuel ensured he received the best care possible. One night, as Manuel sat beside him in the study, Carlos sighed heavily. "I spent my life making choices for Lucia," he admitted. "Some good, some terrible. But in the end, I just wanted her safe. Now, I see I only robbed her of happiness." Manuel looked at the man who had once stolen so much from him, yet he felt no hatred, only pity. "She has a second chance now," he said. "We all do." Luna, however, thrived. The mansion's gardens became her sanctuary. No longer burdened by the struggles of survival, she was free to create, to nurture the plants she loved so much. Manuel often found her outside, her hands deep in the soil, her face peaceful. "You remind me of your mother," he told her one afternoon as they walked through a row of blooming roses. Luna glanced at him curiously. "In what way?" "In the way you find beauty in things most people overlook," he said. "You make life bloom where others see emptiness." A comfortable silence settled between them before Luna spoke again. "I always wondered what my father would be like," she admitted. "And now that I know you, I think I finally understand where I get that from." Manuel swallowed the lump in his throat, overcome with emotion. "I don't deserve to hear that," he murmured. "But you do," Luna insisted, "because you came back, and you're here now." Their journey was far from over. There were wounds that would take time to heal, trust that had to be rebuilt, and a past that would always linger in the background. But for the first time in years, there was also hope. A hope that despite the pain and the secrets, they could be a family again. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. The truth was out. The weight of years of deception, guilt, and heartbreak hung heavy in the air as Manuel, Lucia, and Luna faced each other. The past finally laid bare between them. The small, dimly lit room in Lucia's countryside home was thick with tension, the air charged with emotions that had been suppressed for far too long. Lucia, her face streaked with tears, nodded solemnly. "Of course, Manuel. We owe you the truth. You deserve to know everything." Her voice trembled as she spoke, her hands tightly gripping Luna's for support. Carlos, his expression of deep regret, took a hesitant step forward. "Manuel, there are things you need to understand. Things we should have told you years ago." His voice was hoarse, burdened with the weight of unspoken words. Manuel's heart pounded in his chest. "Then tell me," he demanded, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "Why did you lie? Why did you let me believe Lucia was dead?" Carlos swallowed hard before speaking. Lucia came back home for the holidays, he began, his voice shaking. She brought more than just memories. She brought news that changed everything. She was pregnant, and at that time, her mother was very ill. We needed her here, and we were afraid, Manuel. We thought you wouldn't accept it, that your life in the city wouldn't allow room for a child. We made a terrible choice. We told her to stay, to start over, and over time, the lie became easier than the truth. Manuel turned to Lucia, his expression unreadable. And you let me grieve for you. You let me believe you were gone. Lucia's sobs broke through the silence. I was young, Manuel. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. My father convinced me that staying was the best choice, that I'd be protecting you from a future you weren't ready for. And I believed him. I thought it was for the best. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. A long silence stretched between them. The weight of lost years bore down on Manuel, his mind reeling from the revelation. Then finally, another voice broke through. Mr. Rodriguez. Luna spoke, her voice hesitant, yet firm. I grew up knowing nothing about you. My mother told me stories, but never your name. Everything I know about you now, I learned only recently. Manuel turned to face her. His daughter, his flesh and blood. She was standing before him, eyes filled with a mix of longing and fear. His heart clenched. Luna. He took a step closer, voice thick with emotion. You are my daughter, and I lost all these years with you because of a lie, because of fear. Tears spilled down Luna's cheeks. I lost a lot too, but we have a chance now, don't we? A chance to be a family. Lucia squeezed Luna's hand and looked at Manuel, her gaze pleading. Please, Manuel, forgive me. I thought I was protecting us all, but I see now I was only running away. Manuel inhaled sharply, his emotions warring within him. Anger, sorrow, relief, love. I need time, he finally said. Time to process this. But one thing is certain, I want to know my daughter. I want to be part of her life, and I want to understand how we move forward from here. Carlos placed a trembling hand on Manuel's shoulder. I don't expect forgiveness, Manuel, but I hope that, in time, we can find a way to heal. Manuel exhaled slowly, nodding. The path to forgiveness is long, but I want to try. I want to rebuild. That night, Manuel stayed in the countryside, his mind restless with the weight of the day's revelations. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a thought took root in his heart. He could not change the past, but he could shape the future. The next morning, as the golden sun bathed Lucia's small home in warmth, Manuel made his decision. Over breakfast, he looked at them, Lucia, Luna, Carlos, and spoke with quiet determination. I've thought a lot about this, he said, and I want to offer you something. I want you to come live with me in the city. Lucia's eyes widened in shock. Manuel, we can't. You can. Manuel interjected firmly. Carlos, your health is failing. In the city, you'll have access to the best medical care. Lucia, Luna, you will both have a stable, secure home. And more than that, we will finally have the chance to be a family. Tears welled up in Lucia's eyes. Are you sure? After everything we did, after everything I did? Manuel nodded. Yes, I am sure. I lost too much time already. I won't lose any more. Luna smiled through her tears. Thank you, Manuel. This means everything. Carlos, frail but deeply moved, whispered, You have a good heart, son. Thank you. And so, with a new purpose, Manuel, Lucia, Luna, and Carlos embarked on a journey toward healing and redemption. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in years, there was hope. Hope that the wounds of the past could be mended. Hope that love could triumph over fear. Hope that, despite everything, they could finally be a family. And in the grand mansion that once felt empty, life would bloom again. As the morning sun bathed the garden in golden light, Manuel watched Lucia with a quiet intensity. She laughed softly, her eyes shining as she spoke with Luna and Carlos. The air was filled with the fragrance of freshly bloomed roses, a testament to Luna's dedication to the garden. Manuel took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "Lucia," he called, stepping forward. "Come with me." Lucia glanced at him, sensing the gravity in his tone. She exchanged a look with Luna before following him down a stone pathway lined with delicate lanterns. As they reached a secluded gazebo draped in soft white curtains, Lucia gasped. Twinkling fairy lights wrapped around the beams, and petals were scattered across the wooden floor. The setting was magical, an intimate haven designed just for this moment. Manuel turned to face her, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for hers. "Lucia," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "This place, this moment, it's all for you." He swallowed hard, his eyes never leaving hers. "For years, I lived with regret. I never stopped thinking about you. Now that fate has brought us together again, I don't want to waste another second." He dropped to one knee, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. As he flipped it open, a delicate ring, adorned with tiny shimmering stones, caught the light. "Lucia," he said, his voice unwavering, "will you marry me? Will you let me be the husband and father I was meant to be?" Tears spilled down Lucia's cheeks as she brought a trembling hand to her lips. She could barely speak past the lump in her throat. With a joyful sob, she nodded. "Yes, Manuel. Yes, with all my heart." From a distance, Luna and Carlos erupted in cheers. Luna ran forward, embracing her mother, while Carlos clapped Manuel on the back, his own eyes glistening. Laughter and joyful cries echoed through the garden as the family embraced. In that moment, the past's pain was eclipsed by the brilliance of the future. A few months later, the mansion brimmed with quiet anticipation. Manuel stood at the end of the garden's aisle, adjusting his tie nervously. The once lonely estate had transformed into a sanctuary of love, its gardens flourishing under Luna's meticulous care. White roses and violets adorned the ceremony space, their scent mingling with the crisp autumn air. As soft music filled the space, Lucia appeared at the entrance, walking arm in arm with Carlos and Luna. She wore an elegant yet simple dress, her beauty radiating in the golden sunset. Every step she took toward Manuel was a step toward healing, toward a love that had endured against all odds. When she finally reached him, Manuel took her hands, his grip firm yet gentle. Their vows were spoken through tears and laughter, sealing a bond that had been tested by time but never broken. The ceremony was intimate, surrounded by only their closest friends and family, yet it was grand in the emotions it carried. The reception in the mansion's grand hall was a celebration of love and second chances. Laughter and music filled the air as friends toasted to the couple's happiness. Carlos, despite his frailty, danced with Luna, his face glowing with pride. Manuel and Lucia swayed together beneath the chandeliers, their movements slow and reverent, cherishing the moment they had been denied for so long. As the night came to a close, Manuel stood at the mansion's balcony, watching as Lucia and Luna laughed together in the garden below. His heart swelled with gratitude. He had once been a man consumed by loss, but now he had found everything he had ever longed for, a family bound not just by blood, but by love, resilience, and forgiveness. From that day forward, the mansion was no longer just a house. It was a home filled with love, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. How did you like this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to catch all our stories. For more emotional tales, click here on the end screen.